relatively soon as we get past this pandemic. And I'm sure everyone will share the same excitement. And so as we gather together tonight in this space, here's what we're going to do. We're going to begin with prayer. Then we're going to have a few introductory remarks and housekeeping issues and matters. And then we will get to our guest presenters tonight to talk about issues that are surrounding our hurricane preparedness, and specifically asking the question, are we ready? Or is there more demand that the citizens of New Orleans need to make upon those who hold the power to make change to do so that our most vulnerable citizens are protected? And then after our presentation for tonight, we'll take some time for questions on tonight. So let's go ahead and begin with a word of prayer as we begin on tonight, and then we'll get started. I hope that you're in a comfortable place. I hope you're in a peaceful place. I hope you're in a place where you can focus and concentrate and are prepared to offer good information tonight and offer up some good questions tonight in a place where your mind is just clear. So in the midst of all the turmoil that seems to be going on around us. Oh God, we ask tonight that you would give us peace, oh God. God, the word that I read on Sunday said, my peace I give to you, my peace I leave with you. God, we need peace right now. God, as we look around and we see tragedy after tragedy and compounding catastrophes and evidences of hurt and pain and sorrow that is everywhere it seems that we turn. God, we ask that you would send peace and comfort, and God, that you would give us swift resolution to how we can bring change, that how we can fix the brokenness that is so apparent in our society. God, we ask that you would never allow us to lose hope that tomorrow can and will change. God, we ask that you would give us a spirit that is one of compassion, one that is love, filled with love, one that is filled with care and concern for our fellow man. So God, now we ask that as we meet together on tonight, that we might be meet out of that concern, and that out of that concern would come a desire to do something for those that are left vulnerable, especially in the midst of storm. So God, we ask that you would give us ears that listen, hearts that perceive, and minds that understand in this moment. Well, I ask this in the name of Almighty God and in the name of my Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, everybody, again, welcome to our Justice and Beyond Forum for tonight. It is a second part series on hurricane preparedness. I want to just tell you a little bit about Justice and Beyond. Most of you are familiar with who we are and what we do. Just want to always reiterate that Justice and Beyond is led by what we call our pillar organizations. We are constantly adding more pillars, but who is a pillar organization? Pillar organizations are those organizations that have made it their commitment to be a part of the planning of Justice and Beyond, getting together on Tuesdays, being present at meetings to decide what our upcoming forums are, and then planning for those forums, and then also deciding what actions that we will take as a collective of many different organizations. If your organization desires to be a pillar, please let us know. We would love to have you. We'd love to use you. We'd love to have your input. We are constantly seeking to build capacity, especially as we work on the important issue of reparations. We need your voice in that. And so as we do that, go ahead and mute your phone. I do hear some feedback from participants, so go ahead and mute your phone, please. Know that we meet every Monday via Zoom. We also have our Pillars meeting on Tuesday. If you're able to join us, please come. If you want to be a pillar, please let Miss Brooke Randolph know, find her name in the participant list. Just say, hey, I want to be a pillar. I want to show up. You can either do that on an individual basis, or you can do that on a scale of representing your organization. With that said, know that in this forum, we operate by peace, love, and respect, and believe in making this a safe place to all who participate in this forum. Do realize that there are many things going on tonight. And so we are glad that you've taken time to be here with us tonight. I do want to say also that Council Member JP Morrell, due to some prior commitments, will be able to be here at 6 o'clock. He's committed to us from 6 to 6:30. And so please, if you can, make sure you stay until that time when we'll have an opportunity to both hear from him and ask questions. And so as we begin tonight, again, this is our second forum on hurricane preparedness. Justice and Beyond as a collective is very concerned on whether our city is ready. We've had a full year between this hurricane season and the last. And our last forum indicated and very much painfully illustrated to us that we're not in a good place. And if there's some things that we need to stand up for our citizens, then we will do that. And we will make sure that we demand that we're treated in such a way that our most vulnerable citizens are protected in the midst of the storm. So tonight we have representatives, or representative rather, if one, if not two, from RIDE. And we also have Ms. Logan Burke from from Alliance for Affordable Energy. And we will also be having Council Member JP Morrell that will be joining us later on at 6 o'clock. And so if there's actions that we need to take, we want to hear about it tonight. Let's see, Elijah, are you with us tonight? I thought I saw your name. Are you with us, Elijah, from RIDE?
He's here, Pastor. He's muted.
Okay.
Elijah?
He is here.
All right, Elijah, maybe we can get your phone unmuted. We definitely want to hear from you. Logan, are you here?
I'm here.
All right, good to see you, Logan. Always a pleasure. All right. And so Elijah, are you here yet? Are you here? Do we have you audibly yet?
That is correct. I am here.
All right, Elijah. Good to have you. We're so glad that you're here, that both of you are here tonight. We want to make sure that we want to hear what both of you are working on. I've got some questions for both of you. It was one particular centered around Entergy that is directed towards you, Logan. And then I want to hear from you, Elijah, and what your group is working on as far as RTA and transportation in the midst of a storm. And if, by your estimation and your group's estimation, if RTA is ready to care for its workers and make sure that they're provided for, and also make sure that our citizens are provided for in the midst of the storm. So first, we want to hear from you and what, if nobody knows who you both are representing and what we need to know about your great organization. So Logan, would you go first?
Sure, absolutely. I'll keep it brief because I recognize just about everybody. And a lot of you know who I am. I'm Logan Burke. I'm the executive director for the Alliance for Affordable Energy. Our organization is a consumer and environmental advocacy organization working on the power sector here in Louisiana. Increasingly, that means we are not just advocating for lower bills. We're not just advocating for cleaner energy. We're also advocating to make sure that people can stay safe and healthy through the storms that are coming as a result of a changed climate. And so that is a little bit what I'm going to talk about tonight, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
All right, safe and healthy. I like that. Thank you, Logan. Elijah, tell us about your organization and maybe something we ought to know about the work that you all are doing and what we need to know.
Well, yes, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elijah Pipersberg. I am the communications manager for RIDE New Orleans. That is RIDE New Orleans. And our organization, it's simple. We fight for world-class transit. We advocate for world-class transit, and that's what we intend to bring to the area of New Orleans. and our organization, we're transit advocates that interact with the RTA, if not on a daily basis, then surely on a weekly basis. And we advocate for just better transportation. That means on time performance, and for anything that transit riders actually need, we go out and our organization services transit riders and ensuring that the RTA's policies and stats and really the fleet is up to date with what's going on and what transit riders need.
All right, very good. The fleet is up to date and with what transit riders need. Very good. Thank you for that. Let me go with Logan first. Logan, Justice and Beyond, and I think citizens as a whole are concerned on whether or not with the catastrophic and some say unnecessary and unwarranted the citywide and region-wide downing of the transmission system, that we probably and may not be in a good place this year, may not be very further along than we were. So many are concerned. And so let me ask you just straight up, do you share that same concern that Entergy is not further along in making us, making sure that we're not in that same place that we were last year with Hurricane Ida?
Yeah. Rev, the thing is, it took a long time to build the utility system that we have now. And it will take a while for Entergy to design, invest in, build a different kind of energy system that is ready for the kinds of events that we're seeing now, whether that's extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme wind and rain and flooding. This is why both the New Orleans City Council and the Louisiana Public Service Commission have dockets open. Dockets that are open for directing the utilities to work with stakeholders on how to build, how to design and build what is both, or it's going to be both, a little bit of both, storm hardened grid, but also a potentially very different kind of system. What I mean by that is we're not looking for the New Orleans City Council or the Louisiana Public Service Commission to just simply say to the utilities, build it as strong as you can build it, because that is a blank check for what we often refer to as gold plating. And frankly, even if the utilities spent billions and billions of dollars that, by the way, we don't have as a poor state to pay for, they couldn't really promise that the power will never go out. But with proper planning, what we've seen is that in places like Florida that have been doing this planning, doing this implementation of storm hardening over the course of years, we can get where we need to go. I think the thing that we are really interested in is seeing how much communities themselves are trying to solve this problem in the short term. So a lot of you are familiar, for example, with Together New Orleans and the work that they have been doing, thanks to you, Reverend Manning, to bring solar and energy storage to community facilities, including houses of worship. We also know that Crew of Red Beans has been doing something similar for restaurants. And what's really interesting is that this community-led resilient energy system effort is drawing the attention of the US Department of Energy. And thank goodness, because what is really scary is that the last 2 seasons of storms are the first time that more people have died as a result of the loss of power than anything else. So hurricane season 2020 and 2021 both were the first years that more people died as a result of carbon monoxide poisoning from using things like gas and diesel generators, as well as heat exposure. And so it's becoming really clear that we need to move both on these sort of utility scale hardening plans, but also listening to what communities know works for them and help move and develop these projects that can keep folks safe, both in their homes and in their neighborhoods. And so just really quick, actually, I'm going to stop because I've been monologuing and I want to see, Rev, if you've got another question before I jump into some solutions.
Yes, let hold right there, Logan, because I think that the gist of it is, you know, that we're very grateful for entities that are filling the gap where Entergy has failed to catch up, and that Entergy it is not in a good place yet because it's going to take a while. It's taking a while to get in this mess. It's going to take a while for us to get out of it.
That's exactly right.
And so go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we've only just now finished in the last couple of years the hardening of our levee systems in our city and in our region. And so thinking about how long it takes for these very large infrastructure projects not only to be designed, but then also that community would get input before all of this money is spent. It takes some time, as you say, to get out of the mess that we're in. Fortunately, there's federal money.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yes.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
infrastructure and jobs bill that was considered the bipartisan infrastructure bill has a ton of money expressly for building more storm-ready power systems, but also for investing in the kinds of solutions that, you know, a lot of these community groups and individuals have been talking about. And so fortunately, there is federal money out there. What we have to do as a community is encourage both our state officials and our city officials to prepare ourselves to go after and compete for that money so that we can get it so we're not paying double.
Right. And Logan, I'm going to come back to you in just a moment. I'm going to turn to Elijah for a moment, but I want you to also talk about solar generators, because and we'll get to that in a minute. But what we also know is that, as you stated, that many people died from carbon monoxide poisoning, and we could have solved this if the city were to invest more and ensuring that people had solar power generators. And so I want to talk about that in just a moment. But let me turn to Elijah. Elijah, just help the people understand what it is that RIDE may be advocating for as it looks towards whether, or tries to answer the question of whether our transit system is prepared for another hurricane season that could be more, that is scheduled to be more intense than possibly last year. So are there demands or asks that you all are making of RTA? Elijah. Did we lose Elijah? You there?
Elijah cannot answer those questions, as I've texted you.
Yes, I'm wondering what Elijah can answer. That's what I don't know. So he does.
He's an audience member.
Okay, he's not. Okay, I thought that he was one of our guests.
No.
All right.
Sorry.
My bad. Okay. All right. So, okay. And we're gonna go back to Logan then. I'm not sure. So, what RIDE is here for? What action, Brooke?
Well, they're here to hear what is being said.
Okay. All right, Logan. We're gonna go back to you, Logan. Tell my question is solar powered generators, and could we could we be more prepared for hurricane season if the city would have invested more in solar power generators? And I know you all are doing what you can to get people solar power generators. Is this something that we need to advocate for? Is this something that Alliance is doing? Is there a program that we need to know more about?
Sorry, I had muted myself.
It's all right.
So yes, so one of the things that I have been a bit frustrated about is that the city for the last couple of years has been investing in what they're calling generator ready facilities at their Nordsee, various Nordsee facilities around the city. And largely what that means is they've been installing switches and breakers that can allow a generator on a truck to roll up to a building to power the building in the event of an emergency. Now, what that means is that when there's a major outage or power failure, it means that the city of New Orleans is now scrambling to vie for any of these mobile generators. It also means that, again, the city is insisting that in the long run, we put our eggs in the fossil fuel basket. Now, aside from the fact that this is what we call maladaptation, because we're trying to solve the climate crisis and the chaos that it puts us into using more of the fossil fuels that have gotten us there to begin with, it also puts us in a worse situation in terms of our ground level and city air quality. When everybody in the city is suddenly trying to depend on these diesel and natural gas fired generators, it means that our air quality, just when everyone is trying to open their windows and try and deal with outdoor the kind of recovery efforts after a storm, is when our air quality is the very, very, very worst. And so we've been encouraging the city instead to think about putting solar and storage on those Nordsee facilities so that they can not only be prepared immediately in the event of an outage, but also reduce the costs of those utility bills at those Nordsee facilities year round. So rather than coming up with a Band-Aid that's intended only for the extreme circumstances, let's figure out how to spend our money wisely so that it benefits folks all year long. And that's one of the reasons that we really think that, whether it's restaurants or the city itself or homes, that investing our money once in solar and storage, that then you don't have to each year invest in hauling out a generator, vying for the few generators that are available in the community or on the market. And then in addition to that, paying for the fuel, the gas, the diesel,
Yes.
the natural gas, which we know then the cost of which spikes during these extreme storms. And so all the more reason, and this is why within both the New Orleans Council docket and the Public Service Commission docket, we are suggesting how important it is that we not just throw kind of the traditional Band-Aids at the situation, but come up with solutions that are useful all the time, because it benefits our grid, it benefits our health, and it actually is adaptation rather than just going back to the same old thing.
Okay, thank you for that, Logan. I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions from our participants, and then we'll come back to do a little more conversation if not. Sylvia, do you see any questions from any audience participants?
Not at the moment. I'm looking back through the chat to see maybe.
I see. a
No,
couple of
but
hands.
I had one that I wanted to ask Logan.
Yeah.
I had reached out to Sophie about the solar power generators. The Musicians Hall with Miss Bethany, we were speaking about that to see was it any way if we can find any for them, for the musicians for this hurricane season.
Mhm. So last year, the best way that I can respond to this is last year after Ida, we were able to get some grant funding to invest in, I think, 20 of varying sizes basically mobile solar and storage generators that are, we used this very weekend at the Climate Justice and Joy event in Baton Rouge. They worked really well. Most of those have been, were given out last year to the folks that had power outages for weeks on end. And this is something that we're interested in partnering with some of our national funders to preemptively invest in some of these things so that we're not scrambling again. Because of course, what happens is when there's a major emergency like this, everyone is buying them immediately and there aren't any left and they become more expensive. And so Ms. Sylvia and those of you who are working with the musicians, this is something that we're trying to kind of plan around early. I will say Sophie, who is on our staff, I'm sure a lot of you know Sophie Zakin, she put together a kind of an internal document that I'm hoping to turn into an external document that's sort of a solar and storage catalog. Sort of here's how this one works and what you can use it for. These are the various costs and how you can order them. And I would also just kind of remind folks, and actually Jody Manali, who's on this call, a couple of years ago after Hurricane Laura reached out to us and said, you know, what can we be doing to help folks even just to keep cell phones charged? Because during the rescue and recovery portion of these storms, we really need to be able just to stay in touch. And so as a result of that, we reached out to one of our international partners and got a number of these. So I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, yeah.
But basically, it's a series of solar panels, very small ones, attached to a battery bank that can charge a cell phone or even a laptop. It can charge all kinds of things for a long time. And so we're looking to invest in and get a number of these so that we can have them ready to go. And also, you know, what we'd like to be able to do is ensure that everyone has something at very least like this that they can have ready, because we know that the power goes out and we know that everybody needs access. So that's something that we're working on.
Thank you,
That's
Ms.
great.
Rose.
Of course.
I have, Pastor Manning, I have 4 questions. Mr. Max, Richard, Mr. Ben, Ms. Brooke, and then Valerie.
All right, Max,
Mr.
please go
Max.
first.
Okay. I've talked to members of my congregation a couple of times now about the whole idea of community lighthouses and installation of solar panels and battery backup. And the questions I keep getting that I'm never able to answer because I don't have the information, I've yet to get it really, is costs, right? That's the first thing people think about.
Of course.
Cost of installation and costs in terms of long-term maintenance and not just maintenance of the panels, but of course also of the roofs that are underneath those panels.
Yep.
So I have absolutely no idea. And Logan, I guess it would be great if we had some talk sheets on those kinds of issues. Obviously, you can't give me a cost for my congregation, our buildings, our plant, but just some way of trying to figure out those things.
That is a really good question, because you're right. It's the one that everyone wants to know, because, you know, what are we getting ourselves into? So the first thing that I would say is there are a number of companies here in town that do solar installation and finance them in various ways. Some of them are leasing, which means very little or no money down. And they are also interested in getting into the energy storage part of the work. Some of them do direct sales and can help get sort of a finance loan opportunity for those. And it always depends on the size of the project. But I think what I'm hearing you say is we need some kind of a cheat sheet, if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah, so what I'm willing to do is try and go to some of our solar friends and see if we can just get something, some kind of an idea of, what a solar owner or solar leaser might expect, both in the short term, the money down and how do we get it started, and then also that long-term maintenance and cost. One thing that I would say is that there's been a ton of interest, and I don't know how closely everybody here follows federal policy efforts, but one of the pieces of the long struggling Build Back Better bill is incentives and rebates so that everybody can access both solar and energy storage. This is one that we keep hearing from our national allies is at the top of the list, is one, like if they can't get anything else, then this is the thing that they're trying to get. And I would also point to the Biden administration's interest in what they're calling Justice 40, which is an effort to put 40% of the benefits of infrastructure and climate spending into disadvantaged communities, most certainly of which includes the entirety of South Louisiana. So, I guess what in my kind of long rambly way, what I'm going to take from this conversation is an effort to build out a cheat sheet, working with our local solar installers and maintainers, just so that we can get a sense of, what could people expect for this.
Thank you, Logan. I will also add to that, Max, too, that Together New Orleans is working with a company that I'm forgetting the name of right now, but will come out and do an assessment of the church, as we have with the 5 to 7 pilot churches and faith-based institutions that are going to be getting those solar panels and battery storage first, and then that'll be expanding to finally we get to that 85 number. But they come out and do an assessment of the roof, of the property, where the battery storage could go, all of those things. And so I would contact the Together New Orleans office and just relate, if you already have it, that your church is interested in being one of those sites and just wants to go through that assessment process to see what that would even begin to look like.
That'd be good. Thank you, Pastor.
All right.
Thank you, Logan.
Of course,
I look forward to that cheat sheet.
I'm working on it.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah, useful information. Thank you. All right, Sylvia, who's next?
Mr. Ben.
Yeah, thanks again, Logan, for the great information you bring us. I just want to start real quickly and say I'm sorry I missed that climate justice and joy thing. Unfortunately, when I went to the doctor for my rotator cuff, they took my temperature. I discovered that I had come down with COVID June 1st. Yeah. So, but I'm recovering okay now. I was in quarantine over the weekend and my temperature is down. I didn't even know I had it. And the symptoms were very mild because I was vaccinated. But I thought about riding up in the car with somebody else. I had a ride. But anyway, I'm glad it went well. But my question, where I live now, my landlord has a complex, 2 buildings kind of linked together. He has solar panels on both. And he does keep his electric bill way down. However, during Ida, and that was the first storm living here we had the solar panels, we couldn't use them. In other words, we had no electricity, even though after the storm, the sun was shining. So, and when I asked him about it, he said, we have it does help us with, but the energy that they generate has to be turned, according to the deal, back to energy. So apparently he doesn't have any batteries.
Right.
But if I understood him right, he's not supposed to have batteries because that is that true? Is that an assumption I'm making?
Yeah, no, it is true that if you do not have battery backup, the solar panels cannot be useful in a power outage, in a grid outage. If you do have battery backup, obviously, then and the system is built in such a way that it is able to island from the grid when it goes down, then you should be fine. But there is no ban on battery backup in the city of New Orleans or in the state of Louisiana. And so you have every reason to encourage your landlord to invest in them. He has every
Yeah.
right to put them on.
Yeah, let me be, he didn't say ban on batteries. He said that the first, if you generate electricity, it has to go back to Entergy first, no matter what the circumstances. That was my understanding when I talked to him. I said, even during a storm? And then he said, okay, I'm glad you clarified that. All right,
Yeah.
thanks. Mhm.
No, as a matter of fact, if you have solar and storage, the system should be set up such that the solar fully charges the batteries first before there's any export to Entergy, which would actually benefit you in the evening as well, because that means that you can use that power in the evening time and not purchase your electricity from Entergy at that time.
Okay, thank you, Logan.
Of course.
Okay, Ms. Brooke, and then Valerie Jefferson.
Yes, I have one of those awful questions, and just because it really annoys me that Entergy has had 2 rate hikes since Ida, right? And what exactly is what happened with that? I mean, how does that happen? And we don't have what was sort of promised to us, which falsely promised probably, but it was promised that we were going to have all this, reliable source of energy in spite of storms, because they were doing such a great job spending our money.
Yeah, great question. Last year after Ida, the New Orleans City Council directed their advisors to look into what happened when, in terms of the point that you're making, the investment in that gas-fired power plant in New Orleans East that was supposed to keep the lights on when we got islanded. That report has not been finalized or submitted to the council yet. Here we are in June. That report was requested back in October. And so we should be seeing it at some point. We've only just now seen a report from Hurricane Zeta, which was in 2020. And so they are taking their sweet time. The point that you make is actually incredibly important about the rate increases. Entergy just a couple of months ago, actually just about a month ago, submitted a new request for a rate increase. The council takes a number of months before they make a decision on such a rate increase. But the thing that's most concerning to us is that they said that they're saying in the course of a year, we spent, aside from storm recovery, they spent $140 million on resilience. Now, they're saying they did that, and we're in the middle of this resilience planning docket, and the council and no stakeholders have any insight into where that $140 million was spent. And so we've got some great big questions, and we are pushing really hard on the council to take very close looks at what Entergy is asking for before the council takes any decision on an additional rate increase.
Very good. Very good. Thank you for that, Logan.
As stakeholders, though, as stakeholders, we should have access to how that money was spent, correct?
I absolutely agree with you. Yes.
Okay.
And it's something that we are asking the city council, or we're asking Entergy to provide. And if they won't provide it, certainly if they won't provide it publicly, then I'm going to come back here and hopefully round up some folks to submit questions to the council about it.
Good.
You will.
Thank you.
Sylvia, before we move on to the next question too, I wanted to make a comment too about Max's question a little bit ago. And that is in regards to when we're looking at solar panels and battery backup storage on faith-based institutions, also know that part of the assessment is assessing what needs to operate in the event of a catastrophic power outage. So when the assessment was done at Broadmoor Community Church, we looked at the fact that we have 4 deep freezers and another 4 refrigerators that need to stay operating so that we can be a place that disperses food and cooks food during the event of a storm. And so that's how that assessment is done, so that we're not looking at operating our entire building in the event of a power outage, but just really what is essential in order to continue operation and meet needs that are critical in the event of a power outage. So I did want to clarify that as well too. So so we have realistic expectations.
So
All right.
said.
Yes. Sylvia, who's got the next question?
Sister Valerie, and then Miss Lane Tripp is after her.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and good to see you again, Logan. It's
Hey.
always good to see you. My question is energy during the hurricane season of last year during Ida. Everyone suffered for lack of power. So this time, have energy reported or gave anyone a plan just in case this happen again? Have they invested in the solar system? Have the city invested in the solar system? Do we have a facility that's ready?
I wish I could tell you that we are all set. I cannot tell you that. What I can tell you is that, as I mentioned earlier, the city has installed these breakers for a number of Nordsee facilities that Entergy can roll up a mobile natural gas generator. But that is dependent on those gas generators being available. And that is as much as I am aware of. I do know that Entergy is getting close on completing the transmission line rebuild you may remember that the big news about the transmission tower that went into the Mississippi River, that is, as I understand, nearly completed. And so we should have that major tether back into our city. But from a, and I would also say that I understand that Entergy has received or is receiving some FEMA money for some storm hardening of a number of substations. But the real trick here, and the vast majority of our outages are associated with our distribution system. Just as our streets are a wreck, if you look around at our wires and poles hanging through our city, it's that is our most vulnerable kind of choke point, if you will. It's those string and twigs that are holding us all together that are really vulnerable to high winds and that are part of the reason we have sunny day outages even. And so unless we really acknowledge that it's our distribution system and really start thinking about then how do we keep people safe and healthy where they are, and that's why this distributed generation, distributed resources are so important, that we won't really have the kind of resilience that we need. It will be a combination of the two. It will be a combination of sturdy transmission and distribution, but we have to be ready to acknowledge that even if we spent all the money in the world, we can't, the distribution and transmission system it would be darn near impossible to have something that could stand up to these hurricane force winds, but we're getting closer.
Okay, I was saying it because last year the city used New Orleans Regional Transit Authority buses for
Cooling.
For power or for cooling system.
Mhm.
But that is not what New Orleans Regional Transit is for. We are the transportation, right? We are a transported city. So we should be picking up the passengers or the clients or the people and take them to the facilities,
Yep.
not to sit back, because those buses is not built for that. I've been driving there for like 28 years. So
Yeah.
those buses not built for that, and they are not equipped with that. That's what I'm saying, because they are unsafe. So because if a person sit on those buses so for like a long period of time, they would inhale which we inhale every day for 8 hours. So
Mhm.
that's what I'm saying. But in the same time, have the city reached out to these facilities like the nursing homes and the hospitals, especially the ones who was not equipped last year for Ida? Have
As
this,
I understand it, there are a lot of lawsuits underway, and I do know that the council has now required that elder facilities and nursing homes and hospitals have some kind of backup generation. I don't know if all of the nursing homes and elder facilities are up to code, up to that new standard, but I know that the council has taken some action to try and resolve that.
Very good.
okay.
Excellent. We hope so, and I think we've heard the same. And we definitely want to make sure that our most vulnerable citizens are taken care of in the midst of a storm. I know that Miss Lane has a question.
Yes, and Miss Bethany after Miss Lane.
All right, go to Lane first.
Mhm.
Hi, I've just put in a link to what I'm holding up. And this is not an ad, believe me. But after Ida, okay, I just want you to be able to see it. And this is what it actually looks like. This is how big it is. Sorry. This is how big it is, okay? That's the top. I did a bunch of research online to find out what were the best performing in terms of, sort of some of the good evaluation sites. Anyway, to find what was a really good and reliable power source so that I would never again be in the position of not being able to, both power my own things and also, which means that I could continue to work, which I need to do during power outages, and so that I can offer it also to my neighbors, which is something that, and I'm not trying to say, well, everybody should just go out and buy one of these, because it really pisses me off, frankly, that so many of the solutions that we're now talking with and all of the community solutions are on the backs of the users because Entergy will not do what they should do. And they're not being held accountable, but that's another topic. Anyway, I just wanted to say, and it's why I put the link in here and included what it has on it. I was able, because of course power goes out just when sometimes when we just have a hard rain, at least in my neighborhood. And I have been able to keep my phone, I only have one, powered. I've been able to actually charge or operate my laptop, my iPad. I've been able to plug in a fan because it has a 110 outlet on it. And if you get what Logan held up, which is one of those folding, that's a solar. Those are solar panels, and the prices are coming down all the time because at the time of Ida, those cost, the good ones, the reliable ones that got good ratings, cost, like about $100, really, somewhere between $75 and $100. I'm waiting until this company comes out with theirs, which will plug in directly to this, because I know their technology is solid. I'm not trying to say everybody buy this, but I'm trying to say it's an option. It's an option for churches. Because the thing about this puppy is, I'm not kidding you, because my granddaughter keeps coming over and trying to turn it on all the time. But when I charged this up after the last time I used it, after the last power outage, months later, it had not lost a joule, as they say, of power. So I just wanted to offer that up to Reverend Manning in terms of the lighthouses and the lighthouse contenders, and every church out there who could have a couple of these. Maybe we can donate, some.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lane, for putting that
Could she hold
link.
it up again, Pastor, before we
This is
move
this is
on?
what it looks like.
What's the name of it on the box, Ms.
It's
Lane?
in the chat, and the name
Yeah.
of
Okay,
it is the
thank you.
Rock, it's Rock Solar is the name.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks.
And we will include that. We're starting to send out a list of resources for hurricane preparedness of our own on our own Justice and Beyond newsletter. So we will include that in that as well too.
Great.
If people have the means, and hopefully, you know, the city or other organizations can get behind making sure that people not only have those, but that people are trained on how to use them too, because
Yep.
sometimes I don't know how easy or how difficult it might be to understand how the mechanism operates, but we do need to do training in some instances as well too, especially for our elderly citizens. Thank you, Lane, so much for showing us that. Bethany.
Okay, so here's my question. We are faced with our social services department and our doctors seeing that many of our most vulnerable patients oftentimes have their power turned off because they can't pay these bills that just keep going up and up. We in our foundation can then go into their online system to pay bills. But the problem is when there's storms, none of the systems are working. And we have people who are without power for months, not just weeks, because of a system that they can't afford. Our solution, I've been working with Frank at James Place, and Sylvia's been helping us on this, is to find out a mechanism within Entergy that as a group of not-for-profits, we could go and say, allow us credits that we can spend down, but we can't figure out where the doorway is to even have this conversation about to create an equitable system. Now, it's not going to help everybody, but it will help hundreds and hundreds of people not die of the heat. How do we go about finding that person to speak to?
So I know the question was directed to me, but I think one of the best people to maybe talk about this and help develop a plan and a program has just joined us, Councilmember Morell, who is a regulator of Entergy New Orleans. What I can do, if I'm happy to help kind of move this forward, but it would likely have to start with either a regulatory decision, or if we could get customer service side to be willing to work with us. But typically in programs like this, so we're trying to get an arrearage management program off the ground. Thanks to the council directing a stakeholder process that is kind of underway. And Bethany, it might be possible for us to include what you're describing in that conversation, but I'll step back and see if somebody else wants to take the reins.
Thank you, Logan, for that. Logan, we are so grateful for you being here, and please stay on in case you can chime in at any point. But I'm going to switch over to Councilmember JP Morell now. We're very grateful for you being here, Councilmember, and taking this time with us. You did receive the questions, and I want to just give you an opportunity to just say anything you want for about 30 seconds or so. And any introductory remarks you want to say?
Not my, you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Not particularly. I mean, today was a good day in the legislature. A lot of the bills that I've been working on, including the bills that deal with sewage and water board and billing, had all passed. It was a very difficult last day, and that there were a lot of last minute shenanigans that revolved around the Bodie White trying to redo the school district bill in central Louisiana. But everything that we wanted to get passed got done. Obviously, I think sewage and water board, generally speaking, has kind of been an ongoing generational problem. Tackling billing in a significant way was something that I really wanted to do as a sitting city council person. And I think though the bill is passed, we have to have those meetings, accept that process, and we're in the process of doing that.
All right. And JP, when you talk about that, the billing issues, are we, and this is off the topic, we'll have to talk about this at another time in more detail, but are we any step closer to being able to fix or update our flawed billing system and software that has been being utilized, even though it is admittedly flawed by some as Sewage and Water Board executives who have stated that to Justice and Beyond?
No, I mean, I think the part of the problem is that they blame the software for the billing errors, but there's been no effort to change or correct the software. So they blame the software really as far as training. And as the bill we had went through the process, at first they were opposed to the bill until we got to the Senate part. But every time they came to the meeting, they said, no, there are no more billing problems. We've solved it. And at each meeting, we would bring out more bad bills, like more recent bad bills. And I mean, even when we were in Senate committee, which was about a month ago, we still had hordes of erroneous bills and still have estimated billing, still have billing that's been incorrect for multiple years. And the biggest problem is even when the past bills that are incorrect, there's been very little effort to correct old past bills, especially if people were pressured into doing settlements. Because a lot of people who had those erroneous bad bills, they got to a point where after so many months of being worn down by Sewage and Water Board about being told, if you don't come to an agreement with us and we decide that you haven't paid this amount, we might shut off your water. So even the final billing bill that we passed doesn't specifically deal with retroactivity, but that's something we'll probably deal with when we draft the council local ordinances dealing with billing. Because I do want to give some relief to people that had bad bills, but got pressured into settlements just because they were afraid they'd lose their water.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Council Member. Bethany, I want you to repeat your question to Council Member Morrell, if just in case he did not hear that. It was a good question, and Logan passed it off and said maybe Council Member could answer that more sufficiently. So can you repeat that, please?
Sure. Okay. The Musicians Clinic has been in a position through our emergency fund that we often step in to pay the energy bills of our ill, vulnerable patients. But what happens during hurricane season is many of them have their power cut off, and then there is no way that we can get into the system to put money in to pay for the bill. So they're without power for months, vulnerable, sick people. What we and Frank's Place have been talking about doing is finding a mechanism to go to Entergy and ask for a credit as to not-for-profits, so that instead of taking money away from healthcare to pay Entergy, they will give us a credit. And we can just go into this system and we can spend it down as vulnerable people need it. Because I understand from Irma Muse Dixon, who was involved in the original contracts, that there was a mechanism in those contracts that vulnerable people were put on a list and their bills were capped. And I don't think that exists anymore. So my question is, how do we begin the process? Who do we talk to? And how do we protect these vulnerable patients?
Well, a couple of things there. First, I am happy to facilitate a meeting at the highest levels with you, Musician Village, and Frank's Place with Energy to resolve the issue of.
We're the Musicians Clinic, by the way.
Sorry, Musicians Clinic. I apologize.
Yeah, we're the clinic.
And James Place.
And James Place. Sorry, I thought you said Frank's Place.
She did. Yeah, both were. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm happy to facilitate a meeting on the timing issue, because I do think that there are significant issues that have been historically there, where when power is cut off, there is no sense of urgency to restore it or deal with past billing. That's just a fact. Something that's been a problem We've heard concerns about it for years. I think that you two groups would be a good example of with concrete evidence of when it's occurred, and that we can try to address that issue, because if you've got people who are in vulnerable states, you've already got a prior agreement with them to step in when problems arise. There's no reason why you can't be directly dealing with the billing and trying to get it resolved, rather than Energy kind of putting them off. And because they're putting them off, you as a third party get put off twice. As far as capping bills, I'm going to have to meet with Aaron Spears, who's the head of our Curo office, and see what the current status of that is. I'm not familiar with that. Irma was on the PSC years ago, and she has a lot of historic knowledge that I don't have, especially considering there have been so many instances in which council members and PSC commissioners kind of courageously kind of jammed it to Energy, and yet those are always lost to the annals of time because no one ever passes that down. For example, my mom reminds me on an almost weekly basis that had she not stood in the gap when Energy was trying to sell off the transmission lines, we would have been worse off than Texas. Because there was a time period when my mom was chair of utilities where, and Charles Rice was head of Energy, they were trying to sell off our transmission lines to like a hedge fund. And when you look at the catastrophic failures that took place in Texas during that freeze, I think it was Tropical Storm Uri, a lot of that dealt with the fact that when you have people who are even worse than Energy on a profit model and low on maintenance, that's what you get. And had MISO been permitted to sell off our transmission lines, we would have been in pretty bad shape, because Energy is bad, but at least they're in the utility, sphere. We could have had random hedge fund in New York owning stock in our lines. But I think there needs to be more of a collaborative effort to try and kind of glean from those people what things they were able to do while they're still here. I mean, because Miss Dixon and my mom are kind of up there in years. And I think that I'll sit down with both of them and see what they did and see what that history is and see if it's something that we can revisit, but I'm just not familiar with it.
Right. Thank you. We'll take that, and Bethany, we'll follow up on that with the council member. Let me ask this, Council Member Morel. We Justice and Beyond and other citizens are very concerned about the Sewage and Water Board being prepared for massive amounts of rain and water and potential flooding. And so the question is posed back to you. In your estimation, are we ready? Of course, we didn't have to deal with that last year with Hurricane Ida. There were other issues, but the next storm may bring massive amounts of water and flooding. Is Sewage and Water Board prepared more so this year than they have been in past years?
I don't think they're more prepared than they were last year. I'd say they're probably right where they were at last year. We have power generation challenges, which is why the council was so bullish on moving forward on the substation, because right now, and for the most part, the Sewage and Water Board is powered through self-generation. The biggest challenge with Sewage and Water Board, honestly, is that it's a really archaic system. I mean, for those of you who have older homes, it's sort of like the Sewage and Water Board is on knob and tube, and the rest of us are on modern energy, which is why part of the expensive cost of the substation was building in the converter lines so that when power comes from the substation or is diverted through it from Entergy, that doesn't hit the Sewage and Water Board and the whole place burst into flames. So we have to not just provide power, we have to convert it to the older power wattage that they're used to using. And so right now, as long as everything remains as it did through Ida, in that right now, I believe they said they have, I want to say it's 93 of 95 pumps operational. Now, the good news is years ago, when I did the second round of Sewage and Water Board legislation with Councilmember DeRusso, they do have to come in front of the Public Works Committee. I don't know if they've come yet, and present a complete status of where the pumps are and the readiness for hurricane season. And that's required by law. So I believe that has not happened yet. I think it's going to happen probably this week. I think hurricane season is just starting officially. And so that's required, and that'll give us a more public facing view because it requires specific information. What I am aware of is what you're aware of, which is what they've put out there in the media, which is that
Mhm.
all but 2 pumps are working. All the power facilities are online and all of the workers are ready, which is generally what they tell us. But honestly, the other piece of that legislation that just passed besides billing also deals with the tremendous expansion of the oversight of the council over sewage and water board so that we can ask very specific questions year round about reliability, and they have to give actual answers that we can actually, make decisions off of. So my hope is that we'll see how that meeting goes. The governor should be signing that bill the next week or so. If we don't feel like we get adequate information from that meeting, after that bill is signed, we'll have the authority to do more of a deep dive into sewage and water board for information.
All right, very good. I'm going to ask one more question, then we're going to turn over to participants
Yes,
that are in the
Pastor
forum. But let me
Manning.
ask this question real quick, Sophia, because
okay.
it has to do with the trash collection, which is
Okay.
an issue that is on everybody's mind because it was frankly negligent last year during Ida and continues to be negligible during right now. And so what encouragement can you give us that trash collection will be better, because we saw massive amounts of piles of trash last year during Hurricane Ida? Can we get dumpsters in place in areas where citizens are most vulnerable? We saw trash smelling and it led to morale issues. Where are we at with the trash collection as we look towards another hurricane season?
Well, if you live below Canal, you're fine. I mean, we're having some hiccups with Richard, but they're pretty much on track to be solvent and ready for when hurricane season starts. We're having bigger problems above Canal, Gentilly, Lakeview, New Orleans East, Lower Ninth Ward. We're having some challenges there. Right now, as we speak, the city is paying about 130% more than it paid Metro for 1 day a week service. And this is problematic on a variety of fronts, because previously we were in a contract with Metro for twice a week trash pickup and recycling. We had a fixed amount of money for doing that. The market did change. I mean, part of the challenge we had there, and something we tried to resolve as a council going forward, is that people who worked there were not getting a living wage. As the council moved towards living wage legislation, as we raise the minimum wage, the cost of those contracts is all going to go up, because we have to, below Canal means downriver, like Uptown, Garden District, everywhere where the fancy people live in Central City. Above means everything between Canal and the lake. I'm sorry, I use that common parlance, but it's challenging because we're paying all these companies 130%. So the full price plus 30%, because it's under an emergency contract, which those are not meant to last a year. And we're on a year doing that emergency contract. So as far as seeing an interruption during a hurricane event, I don't think you'll see one, because at the point where now we're paying hurricane rates daily right now. So that's not an issue as far as you'll get your 1 day of pickup. The problem that's going to exist is that if there's a hurricane event, we're going to have debris on top of pickup. And then we'll have to let a second emergency contract, which will be even higher than the current one, to do debris separate from regular trash pickup, which is going to be exponentially expensive. Right now, the mayor, I believe, selected Sidney Torres's group to do their further negotiation with. I've got concerns. I think that whatever contract comes to us, I'm of the opinion we need to kick all the previous submissions to the OIG to look at all of them. I do understand that as we look at them now, there has been a concern from a lot of people that all the other contracts dealt with trash pickup from the point of pickup to the dump. And I believe the concern that's been raised is that Mr. Torres's contract goes to the emergency transfer station in New Orleans East that's not supposed to stay open. because it's the old Gentilly landfill. It was closed for a reason, and it was only reopened under an emergency contract, and it's not permitted to stay open as a transfer station. So I think that there's going to have to be an effort to kick the tires on that, because I don't think the people of that community intended that transfer station to stay open. And if that's contingent upon that contract working, that all needs to be public, that the people in that community need to know the city intends to try and rezone that property to make it a transfer station again, because that's really have a significant impact to the quality of life of people around Old Gentilly.
All right, thank you, council member. We're gonna take some questions now, Sylvia, from the
Yes.
participants.
Yes,
The
sir.
council member, we know we got a lot of questions, so, and we only have you for 14 minutes more, so.
I will come back, Pastor, I promise.
All right, appreciate you. All right, Sylvia, who we got?
Yes, sir. Well, first I wanted to say thank you to council member Morel, because the Energy Man did visit my home this evening due to my last visit with you all. So I really say it was very, very quick. So I thank you again for that.
I appreciate that.
And is Mr. Max and Miss Valerie again. That's the two questions we have, and Ms. Brooke. Mr. Max?
Oh, you're muted, Mr. Max.
Thank you, Councilman. Logan, are you still there? Logan? Logan brought up an issue, Councilman, that that I thought was very interesting. I was hoping that she could articulate it better than I can. And that is that the city is mostly investing in mobile generators powered by fossil fuels to deal with emergency situations. And it seems like that we're doing that, we're dealing with retro technology rather than thinking about the long-term effects on air quality, as well as greenhouse effects and so on. I don't know whether the council is dealing with that issue or not.
I was actually, so during last hurricane season, it came to my attention that there are actually no emergency responders, whether it's firemen, police, EMS, that have any installed generators on site at all. So what you saw was, for the most part, the same generators that we went and bought from Lowe's to like keep an AC running in our house. They were carting out multiple ones like that, to the point where it was kind of unruly to try and keep those places operational. Something that the new council has kind of begun to discuss with the administration coming in is that you cannot continue to operate emergency responders on that kind of outdated, inefficient, expensive, because you're literally going to get gas and pouring it in technology. And that there needs to be an effort. I know we're working with Pastor Mann and others on the Community Lighthouse Project. I think that I'll say this candidly, whether it's solar or whether it's natural gas, they have to come up with a generator solution that's not just them pouring gasoline. Just think about it this way. As bad as it is for a homeowner with CO2 poisoning and keeling over, in some of these stations, they're running like 8, 9, 10 generators at once to try and keep light on there. So it's a problem that's been there. It's actually been very surprising to me since Katrina. They haven't figured out that was a part of, the fact that the city will lose power during major events is pretty much a certainty.
Right.
So there was no effort to really account for that. And it was a corner that was cut. I don't know if it was cut by I guess at this point it was cut by the Nagin, Landrieu, and Cantrell administration, because they all should have known better. But it's one of the things we're kind of beginning to tackle as a capital project, that we're going to have to go and figure out whether it's every police station, every other one, every fire station, every other one, but you can't have first responders down. Now, ironically, 911 was never down. All the stuff I'm telling you that we should have, 911, our 911 center over by the highway and City Park Avenue has it, but that's because it's a state facility. In the state facilities, they require it. So that 911 center, it can go completely off the grid. The problem they ran into was that they couldn't send information to dispatch people because the police stations had no power. So
Yeah.
we're working on it, but Logan's 100% right. We cannot continue just to be pouring gas into old generators to try and power buildings.
Okay, good, thanks.
All right, thank you for that question. Sylvia, who's next?
Valerie and then Ms. Brooke.
Oh, you're still muted, Miss Valerie.
Thank you, City Councilman at Large Morrell. We are so glad for you to be here. But my concern is about, in case you don't know, about transit in New Orleans, right? So I'm not gonna give you like the whole thing because the pastor ain't gonna allow me like 3 minutes. So, so I'm gonna be sweet and short. And plus I have another person here, active operators here, because I'm not an active operator at this time. So my question about RTA last year, RTA had I want to say a settlement for no agreement with the operators because the mayor had reached out to me. At that time, I was the president of the union. So they was in short of operators. So they reached out to the general manager at that time, still is, reached out to the union. And we said, we don't have agreement. So the mayor reached out to me and I said, well, if the city asking for us, of course, we're gonna come and step up. But in the meantime, RTA did a signed agreement with us. So the union brought in over 100 drivers. That's why they was able to have the cooling system out there on the streets. And after we showed up, the company RTA did not fulfill their agreement with us. So in the meantime, I'll bring it back up to date like this year, because I don't want to talk about last year. So we're on this year, 2022. RTA, for as I know of, RTA do not have enough for operators. Matter of fact, RTA do not have enough operators for today's service. So are the city able to, I want to say, give us a plan in case that RTA do not have enough operators to put us in emergency mode for transportation for the city of the citizens of New Orleans?
Good question. Thank you,
So-
Valerie.
So do y'all currently have a signed agreement as a union with RTA that they're not honoring?
No, right now we're in negotiation of the contract.
Okay,
But
then here's my suggestion. It's very dangerous to base your hiring off emergency powers, because emergency powers go on and they go off. So even if you got the mayor to issue an emergency to get you hired there, I would prefer as a council member with my colleagues to weigh in on your side on the negotiation. And I prefer to have y'all have a signed agreement as a union with RTA that's binding, because emergency powers are just very tenuous and they literally can exist one day. You could have everybody fully employed under an emergency contract one day, and if the mayor rescinds it, you're all fired and you have no protection. And so I would much rather, I mean, obviously, should a hurricane come or some other thing and we need y'all, I would support an emergency contract, but really you should be building in the emergency language into your negotiated contract, because that's the only way you're going to protect yourselves when you have to hire up and hire down. So I'm happy to meet with you in person and we can sit down and figure out how we can do that in the negotiation, but you should have that all inside your contract. Otherwise, you're just not protected. And I mean, I want people protected that are employed, especially those who are in unions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
But I also hear the question of, or hear the concern that there are not enough RTA drivers right now, let alone in the event of a hurricane where the city is calling upon RTA bus drivers to step up and use RTA buses as cooling stations again.
But the general problem you have across the city is that when you have unionized labor with signed agreements, you have no staffing problems. I'll give you an example. At the convention center, they have a signed agreement with Unite Here. Even during the COVID pandemic, the convention center was fully staffed. That's Centerplate at the convention center. Centerplate had the same contract at the Superdome with no signed union agreement. They were so understaffed, they had to cancel events the entire COVID period. Because when you have a signed union contract, it's a contract between your workers and the company, and they show up. Without a union contract, if I was an RTA driver, you get fired at will by somebody who don't like you, who they can up and down your pay. That's the problem with non-unionized labor. People don't want to work for especially in transit with RTA. With
Sure.
the stories I've heard from people who are operators and how they're treated, I don't know how long anyone would last there without a union rep and union contract protecting you from retaliation or people just being jerks to you. So, I mean, plus on top of that, when you talk about safety in the city, the same safety issues that plague Uber and taxi drivers is like a RTA driver's got that times 10, because the same people who come on a bus acting a fool, same
Yeah.
people who might do something, that's RTA bus drivers got 30 of those people. Taxi drivers got one. So
Yeah.
anyway, let's
And
answer
let me,
another question before y'all end up.
I got
know
you.
Mr.
Let me
Randolph
go to
was
Brooke.
next.
We'll go to Brooke.
Hi, thank you for coming. I've got two questions. One is that, yes, we're always going to have water or something during storms. We're always going to have storms. I want to know whether, because during our last forum on this topic, our first part of it, we noted that there was no real emergency plan for the city, that it was in process and it wouldn't be ready till mid-July, which is of great concern to us. And I want to find out whether we have plans to have people not on buses getting cooled, but really getting cooled in places for shelters for people if they cannot leave the city. So that's question one. Question two is, I think that we need to ask you guys in council to make sure that in November, we have a citizen included in a conversation always, every single November, on what needs to be changed for the coming hurricane season, because it feels as though it just drops out of people's memory. So those are my questions.
On the first, and not to speak out of school, but we know about as much as you do about the hurricane plan. I would go even as far as to say this: the mayor does not collaborate with us on anything. And even when the mayor had the press conference on hurricane preparedness, we weren't given any briefings, which meant it was very difficult for us to ascertain the answers to many of your questions. I do think going forward, what we've been doing very diligently is identifying the areas in which we're not getting communications, and we're increasingly getting in a position where we have to kind of compel communication. I'm not aware of any current plan that's driven by the city to change the response on cooling or needs for senior citizens and the like this hurricane season. I think their plan right now is more than likely to get Valerie's people, pay them a little money, put them on buses and roll buses out again. I think that when you look at what Pastor Manning and others are trying to do with the lighthouse situation, they're doing a community-driven solution to that same problem because there's an absence of a government solution, which is why I'm working very diligently with them on
Yes.
Lighthouse. And I think that tomorrow there's going to be a press conference for the first one at the center on Elysian Fields. And it's like a proof positive this is something that we should be working for and achieving, but it's a challenge. But I think a lot of that's because there's a huge disconnect between government and people at this point. And there's a
Yes.
lack of responsiveness, not just this issue, but all issues. And I've kind of gotten a bad reputation because I keep telling people I don't want to have secret meetings. I want to have public meetings about everything.
Thank
Because
you.
I feel like when we have secret meetings, nothing comes out of them, because you can't hold someone to account if they tell you they're gonna do something in private.
Exactly.
So I do feel like when it comes to hurricane preparedness and sewage and water board, a lot of that falls in the wheelhouse of public works. When it comes to a general hurricane preparedness plan, that probably falls partially under governmental affairs, which is my committee. I'll meet with Councilmember Thomas and Councilmember Geruso to see if we can maybe put a joint committee together just to kind of go more in depth on hurricane preparedness, because As I recall from the mayor's press conference, which I was not invited to, not that I would have gone necessarily, but I was invited. But it seemed like a lot of the onus was on the public to have your plan to get the hell out of here.
Right.
It wasn't like,
Yeah.
here's what we're doing differently for those of you who can't leave. It was more like, it's on you. Get ready to get out of here when we say pull the trigger. And
In a
as you know,
city that is primarily poor.
Yeah.
correct. So I think between the poor and vulnerable, we have to have a public plan. It can't just be the convention center. Can't use Superdome anymore. Superdome's under construction right now, so you can't go stay in there. So it's right now, it's like buses in the convention center. And if someone can't get across the river because they're poor and don't have a car, if someone's in New Orleans east of the lower 9 and they're dying of heat stroke, and we don't have RTA drivers to bus in the convention center, how in the hell are we going to house people there anyway? We have to have these cooling stations that are situated near where people live.
Absolutely.
He's close enough that a caregiver can get them there. So it's a solution that it's an obvious solution that's being community driven anyway. And I feel like my role right now, working with Pastor Manuel, is trying to supercharge the community driven solution because I think it's a good one. It'd be nice if the city administration would be on board as well.
Yes.
Also leaning into that, because it just solves two problems at once. And once you build those institutional solutions that are properly funded and set up, then you have that solution every hurricane season forever.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
But in the
It is,
meantime, here we are, it's June 1st and,
oh, it's June 6th.
well, true.
June
It's June 6th and we're not ready.
We are not.
We are not.
And do you think we could have a citizens
Yeah, I think,
know,
I
town
think-
hall type thing or something after hurricane season's over?
I think having a town hall I think that if we have an uneventful hurricane season, it would be nice to have a citizens-led, maybe a round table or group on what we think could be different. If it goes poorly, then we'll probably have a town hall sooner rather than later. That's my prediction.
And let
Thank
me
you.
say this, I think, and when Councilmember Thomas was on last time, we had this discussion, he talked about a disaster advisory council or commission that we would assemble to talk about such issues. Austin Feldman thought we already had one that existed, but not so sure about that. But that's something that I think you and him ought to talk about.
I'll chat with him about it. That certainly sounds like a great idea.
Very good. All right, well, Councilmember, I know you got to run, and we're due to wrap up. Any final thoughts that you want to share with us?
No, I mean, I think I'm happy to come on again. I'm sorry about the short time. I've got my house is like plague, injury, mayhem right now. So I'm dealing with my wife with a busted ankle and my kids having COVID. So I have to go do that, but I'm happy to come back on again, have a lengthier conversation on more issues. I always like visiting with y'all. We have a lot to talk about. It's a lot going on.
All right. Well, we appreciate all you're doing to make the city a better place, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you guys. Have a great night.
All right, my friend.
God
All right,
bless.
everybody. Unfortunately, we got to leave it there. We'll talk about some more actions on another time. I have another meeting at 6:32, so 6:30 as well. And so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up with any closing announcements that anybody might have.
I would like to invite anyone and everyone who's interested to come to a hurricane preparedness meeting tomorrow at the TEP Center in the lower 9th. We are going to have, remember, we were told there's going to be a brand new NOLA ready, well-informed person when Austin Feldman talked to us. She's going to be at the meeting tomorrow night, as is the roadwork representative and Shad Will from Hurricane Preparedness. We worked with Oliver Thomas. None of us were very pleased with the answers we got from the first set. So tomorrow night we have different people talking, and this one is going to be in person. Please come and see the new Leona Tate Center, the former McDonough 19. The meeting starts at 5:30. Hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Any other announcements? All right, I'd like to thank our guest panelists for tonight, Councilmember JP Morrell and Logan Burke. Thank you always for your expertise and for your input and for your very hard work. We're going to leave it there, everybody. Let's close in prayer as we go our separate ways and ask for protection for each one of us on tonight. Oh God, we ask that you would protect us as a city, God, that you would give our people that are in offices of high power, give them an understanding of those who are most vulnerable, oh God. God, we ask that there would just be some compassion that these leaders have, that is not selfish but is selfless. That it looks around, surveys the land, and say there are people that are falling through the gaps. And God, help us be the people that don't wait on our leaders, don't wait on government, but help us be the people that figure out ways that we can mobilize and work together to come up with reasonable solutions to care for one another. So now, God, as we go our separate ways, we ask that you watch over us, keep us safe, oh God, and bring us back safely again on next week. We ask it in the name of Almighty God and my Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you,
God
everyone.
bless
Be safe.
everybody. God bless.
Good night.
Good night.